Hi everyone, and it's absolutely fantastic to be here. I see so many people, ex-NDTV in the auditorium that I'm almost tempted to shift from discussing this book to getting into gossip about various dark, dreadful secrets from the NDTV days. But maybe we will restrain ourselves. The second question, which is actually the rules of engagement that I think we have to establish before we start, Jyotsna, who's asking the questions?
Both of us. Because I don't think either of us know how to be on the other side, honestly. So this is going to be a freewheeling conversation, and we're just going to interrupt each other, basically.
And in case you're wondering about that interrupting each other part, Jyotsna and I, just as a matter of introduction, are fairly accustomed to interrupting each other. She used to be the output editor at the time when I used to do the 9 o'clock news. So she was the voice in my ear shouting at me evening after evening, night after night for more nights than I care to recall. So I'm sort of used to having her shouting, and I sort of wake up dreaming about it. And then we did work closely together when I was setting up Editorgy. She shouted at me some more at that time. So yes, that's a good introduction. Have you ever been introduced that way, Jyotsna, since you wrote this book?
So I said, Vikram, it's time to pay back. Kindly come tonight. And this is your payback, so let's start, Vikram.
All right, absolutely. Fine, time for payback. What made you think of writing a book?
So this is my second book, and this one is it's very close to the heart, and as my uncle is sitting here, also part of the family history. This is our family's history, a legacy that we've tried to share, because I think this was a story that was worth sharing, Vikram. And so we've tried to do our best to bring the story out, because also I think in times like today, where history itself is debated, when you have a first-hand account of history, I think it is best to put it out.
There are so many themes in this book that makes it particularly topical. Themes around how you deal in situations of atrocity, how do you deal with oppression, what is the role that the media should play, at what point should you speak out, what point should you not speak out. There are lots of those broader aspects that are there in the book, and I would like to go through them with you. But let's just start with, first of all, the question of, you said that there are stories out here that should have been told. I'm almost surprised you didn't tell some of them earlier. I'm referring in particular to some of the stories you have out here about Punjab. Lots of behind the scene events that, frankly, I think most people didn't know about.
So Punjab was, I think, the tricky part of this book. The other part, I think my grandfather had collated it, my uncle had collated it, but Punjab was the tricky part of the story. And I think that is the reason why this book in itself took us so long to write, because I had to convince my father to write it. He was a bit nervous about touching what was a very sensitive issue, which is the militancy in Punjab, and my mother more so. So I had to, I think it took me almost about 2 years to keep prodding, and my father's outlook on this was that, look, if I'm going to write this story, I'm going to write the whole story and nothing but the entire truth. Either you can write the whole thing or you don't write at all. And so I finally managed to convince him, Vikram, and the reason we've started with this is because in the entire Punjab narrative, somewhere what we read, Punjab begins from Operation Blue Star. And then, the next story that you hear is about the Delhi riots. Both of them, I mean, the Delhi riots, horrific. Nobody can take away the atrocities that happened. But there was a missing story. There was a missing peg in that story, which we've tried to complete, because before Operation Blue Star, things had happened.
And that's what your book starts with, right? Bomb blast. A bomb blast in which 2 people died. 2 employees of Pratap died. Another one was injured. And the story of the terror that actually was there in Punjab long before Blue Star and other things. Share some of those stories with us. I mean, of course, eventually the idea is that everyone should get the book and read it, which I'm sure they already have. But share a little bit of the flavor of that, because you also grew up with that, didn't you?
I did. I think it's funny because people think that children don't really know much or don't realize what happens, but actually children internalize the most. So when we were writing this, when I was talking and I was telling my father this is what happened, he said, really? I remember it vaguely, but I have absolute clear memories of many of those days of terrorism. And so I think it was very important for us to fill the gap in that story and to kind of, regional stories, Vikram, sometimes what happens is that Delhi didn't have a pulse on what was really happening in Punjab. The journalists that came to cover Punjab stayed within, very secure, safe spaces. And so this was also in an attempt to bring out a regional story, which I think deserved to go pan-India.
I'm just going to dwell on that a little bit further because as you're growing up, journalism, in those days, the risks that journalists would take to actually tell their stories is sometimes forgotten. How old were you and where were you when, your father almost got shot. It was a matter of if he hadn't diverted and somebody hadn't overtaken him.
My grandfather.
Your grandfather, I beg your pardon, he almost got shot, right? Tell us about that day.
I think he was chased. I think there was a couple of car chases in which he was chased by these strange cars, which were terrorists. I do remember that there was a time where there was a man who did try to enter our house. We did have a lot of security. We had top security. Despite that, a man tried to enter our bathroom. And, when he was half in already, in fact. I remember this very clearly again. And my dad rushed to that room because he had realized that every evening we would sit and he knew when the security guards would pass, he would see the shadow. And one evening we were sitting and he noticed that the shadow had gone one way, but that shadow had not come back. So he realized the kids, we had moved to our room, which was on the other side. So he went running and there was a guy who was trying to get in. So there were a few incidents like this that happened. We had a lot of security. There were many months that I didn't go to school. And I remember my dad, every other day, he would wake up and there were friends and acquaintances who would be calling him and saying, do you think school would be open today because there was curfew? They would ask him that, do you think, because he's an editor, and there was no social media, so I guess they had to call. But this is how it was. I was 83, 10 years old.
The story of that, and I'm going to link it all the way back to when Pratap started and then, of course, became the Hindi. Pratap was Urdu, right, when it started? So let's actually start at the beginning and come up with that because I don't want to weave some of the stories of what are the real duties and responsibilities of a journalist. At what point do you say, this is what I'm here to do and I'm going to do my job, and if it means a risk, I have to take that risk? At what point do you say, no, it's not worth it? It's not worth it for the risk to my family, for example. And those are questions, I guess, many journalists often have to take. So let's go all the way back, right? Pre-independence days. Pratap was an Urdu paper, wasn't it?
Urdu launched in 1919 in Lahore, just at the cusp of Jallianwala Bagh massacre, suspended immediately by the British. Suspended for a year, so couldn't report on the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. And yet I'm always reminded of what I had read, words of my great-grandfather who said that newspaper men and editors are not vendors. We're not here to sell news. And I should be asking you, from what you've read of the book, Vikram, to where we are today, what would you say?
I have a lot to say on that, but let's come to this in the second half. We did agree to fire questions at each other, so let me start by doing the questioning and then you'll get your chance.
Back?
You can get the chance to fire back, as you have often done in the past. So I'm again coming back to that. So your grandfather sets this up, right? What was the purpose?
My great-grandfather.
So your great-grandfather set it up because your grandfather at that time was an active revolutionary, wasn't he?
Yes, he became an
the British called him a terrorist, or would have called him a terrorist.
I guess. I'm looking at my uncle to say yes. I guess so, yes. I think he was 17, or he was very, very young, still in his teens when he actively took on the British. And I think by the time he was 21 or 22, he'd been in jail for a good 7, 8 times. And the British hated him, and every time he would come home from jail, his father would ask him, for how many days are you home this time? And this is how he continued to be. He was a revolutionary, met all the peers that you read about in the history books, was first arrested in what we've all read about in the history books as the Saunders case, when Bhagat Singh escaped Lahore, but it was my grandfather who was actually arrested and considered to be an accomplice, which he wasn't. And at that time, my great-grandfather was more worried that he should not turn an approver. And I think we've quoted somewhere in the book from his memoirs saying that I would rather that he be hanged than he turn an approver. So those are the kind of men that were born in those times in an environment of nationalism. Different times also, perhaps, Vikram.
So those stories are very much there in the book, which is why I want to dwell on them, because I'm again trying to understand the mindset. It's not about saying, okay, I'm going to try and keep myself safe and I'm going to try and keep myself protected. Here's your great-grandfather looking at his son and saying, get hanged, but don't turn an approver. Don't come out of... I don't care if you're in jail, I don't care if you're hanged, don't turn an approver. Bring some more color to that. Like, what makes someone think that?
I think it was a complete belief in where he was coming from. I think it was the kind of gravitas that a lot of freedom fighters, journalists, people of the time had, which is missing a little bit these days. But I think it was also the thing that this is what we are fighting for, and you're very, very clear of the fight that is there and the way you can do it. There was no scope of a compromise in those times. And I think that for my great-grandfather or my family, I think, has always been, I think sometimes potentially, it leads to repercussions, perhaps even financially, that they've always been so staunch in their belief of what they're doing that they've never compromised. And I think in those days it's good, but I think somewhere down the line, there has to be a little bit of give and take, which they admit to, not doing, which is perhaps why maybe the newspaper could have lasted a bit longer than it did. It did, yeah.
Your grandfather was in the same prison as Bhagat Singh, wasn't he, when he was hanged? Bhagat Singh was hanged?
Yes, I think that is one of the rare accounts, first-hand accounts actually, of a freedom fighter in jail. So my grandfather was in jail on the 23rd of March, 1931. And that account is in this book. It's something that, my grandfather had also written about, but when we were writing it again, this is an account that continues to bring goosebumps. Every single time I read it, I wrote it, there is the feeling that, oh my God, we've come very far from the kind of men that, we had once upon a time.
Describe, I mean, you of course spoken about it here, but just describe that particular day. What exactly was happening.
Can I just read?
Yeah, why don't you just read it out?
It's better, yeah. So these are in the words of my grandfather. So we thought the hanging would be on the morning of 24th March, but on the 23rd of March at about 2 p.m., the prison barber came running to us with tears in his eyes and said, "Sab kuch khatam ho gaya hai." The Sardar is saying they would probably be hanged today itself. He has conveyed Vande Mataram to the two of you. My grandfather Virendra requested Barkat to go back to Bhagat Singh and ask him for a keepsake. Half an hour later, the barber returned. In his hands were a black fountain pen and a comb. On the comb, Bhagat Singh had carved his name with a blunt instrument. Ehsan Ali kept the pen and I the comb. Every evening at 7 p.m., Chief Warder Chattar Singh would lock us up after securing all other prisoners. That day, he came at 4 p.m. When we asked him why he had come 3 hours early, he became emotional and could not speak. After several minutes, he composed himself and said the end had come. The three would be hanged that evening at 7 p.m., and there was nothing much that could be done to save him. Just before 7 p.m., Bhagat Singh, Shivaram Rajguru and Sukhdev Thapar were brought out and taken towards the Phansi Ghar. As they walked, they loudly shouted, "Inqilab Zindabad." Hearing it, the other accused in the conspiracy case responded, Soon the entire jail was reverberating with loud cries of Inqilab Zindabad. We too joined them. It spread even to the non-political prisoners who started shouting the same slogan. Then there was deadly silence. That night, no one ate in the central jail of Lahore and no one slept. Only the chief warder Chattar Singh would tell us, as he was present at the spot. We waited for him to come, and at 7 in the morning, he finally opened our locks. We had many questions to ask about how the three revolutionaries had approached death. Singh could not speak and then burst out crying. With tears streaming down his face, he said, I am a government servant and I have seen many hangings, but I have never seen such bravery in facing the gallows before. When the revolutionary came out of his cell, Chattar Singh made a request. He said to him that as there were only a few minutes left of his life, he should remember Vaheguru. Hearing him, Bhagat Singh laughed, saying, Sardarji, throughout my life, I have never remembered him. Looking at the atrocities against the poor and the downtrodden, I may even have reprimanded him sometimes. Now, with death standing right in front of me, if I remember him, he will say that this young man is both dishonest and a coward. But if I do not change my views about him, he would say that this young man was both honest and brave. Saying this, Bhagat Singh started his walk towards the gallows.
Wow, that's you're right. That's actually one of the first accurate accounts from somebody who was in the prison about the day when Bhagat Singh was hanged. Let's come back to Pratap then. So what was happening with the paper through this entire period, the entire period where the fight for freedom and the fight for independence was going on? Your grandfather was, a revolutionary going in and out of jail. What is happening to Pratap? Because you said it had got banned fairly early, right?
Yeah, and then it came back and it was sold out, but it was perpetually, the British were perpetually suspending it, penalizing it. And in those times, sum of like 2,000 rupees, the security has been taken away. Or it was perpetually, the British were just not happy with it. So there was a penalty that was being paid a lot of times. But it was also remarkably being defended by none other than Jawaharlal Nehru at a point. So it was, and it's been remarkable because, when this book came out, Vikram, I've met people from different parts of the country. I've been to a lunch and somebody said that he was from Rajouri and that this news, his father used to read it. I went to, somebody who is in Chennai said that this was the paper his father lived on. So I met so many people from across the country, who kind of remember the Urdu Pratap. And it's been gratifying actually to hear it.
So with the coming of freedom after independence, you had partition. So your family and they all had to flee across, come across to India. And also that's when the Hindi version started, right? Because what are the reason for that? Was that a lot of the Urdu speaking readership was in Pakistan and not relevant? Or what are the reason to suddenly start the Hindi edition?
No, I think it was, this I think my uncle would know better.
Yeah, Actually, I'd love to get you in at some point.
Yeah.
With this. Yeah.
He was 5 years old and my father was 1 when a partition happened. They had already gone for the summer with my grandmother and my grandfather was still in Lahore. They had gone for the summer thinking they're going to come back, but they never did come back. And I think even my research actually kind of shows that while Pratap was doing immensely well, before partition, its circulation only went up after partition, and which is quite remarkable because it had to start again. And I think it was on, I think it was, in my opinion, it was on the fact that it was already doing well that they decided to launch another one, perhaps like NDTV, when we launched another channel and another channel. So perhaps that.
Actually, many channels, and a website and some apps. So, okay, fine. We digress. Challenges for journalism that followed. For a long period of time, actually, there were financial pressures and other things, but journalists always felt they could say what they wanted to, write what they wanted to, had complete and total freedom, until, of course, then the emergency comes along, and that, again, you've described in the book as a a fairly challenging period. I'm almost surprised that nobody actually got arrested there. Zail Singh apparently intervened and said, don't arrest anybody in Pratap.
I think it was almost impending that there would be an arrest. Both my uncle and my grandfather, there was speculation. Let me put it like that within the family that arrest was imminent. But then then we did hear that there was a call that had come to say that stay that arrest. But my grandfather, who said that all through the British, we've never compromised on our editorials or the newspaper. Refused to compromise even during the emergency. And I think we were one of the first newspapers where that midnight knock did come. So my grandfather did not write for the entire the period of emergency. And that did have a cost, financial cost, because eventually Jalandhar did become a big hub of the media after partition. A lot of newspapers moved, the Hindi, the Punjabi, and the Urdu that time, Milap and stuff. Pratap was the only newspaper that did not write an editorial throughout the emergency. And then I think people wanted unlike today, people did want an editorial, and they had to pay a price for it. But my grandfather, that is the time he collated his life's experiences.
So not writing an editorial. So that's an interesting way of doing it, that you're just not writing an editorial. What does the government say to that? It's not right. It's not that you're writing an anti-government editorial. You're just not saying what you truly think. Is that an act of defiance by itself? Just not saying, okay, I will not say what I really think.
It was. But initially, they did go with the blank spaces. So initially, both the newspapers had blank spaces. And we've got photos of that actually still in the book of, the front pages, the blank, and it's blank in the Urdu and blank in Veer Pratap, the Hindi, this thing, but that was not allowed. So eventually all these people said, you're not allowed to take out blank spaces. So my grandfather said, fine, I will not just write an editorial.
And what was that blank space then filled with?
Nothing. It was just
matrimonials.
A white space. No, nothing.
Once the blank space started to be filled.
All right. Why don't you sit? I mean,
okay, I have another one.
Oh, perfect.
You know what happened was that when the emergency was declared, there was a slip up in Punjab, in Jalandhar. We were not supposed to be told that the emergency had been declared and was constitution suspended and everything. Somebody made the mistake of stopping the publication of our papers and telling us why so. And I immediately called up Delhi. I called up Kuldeep Nair and said, look, this has happened, and he didn't know about it. And he informed a lot of opposition leaders, George Fernandez and all, who went underground because they got this information. So next day, we flashed the news about the emergency, whereas nobody else in India, was able to do that. This had the Chief Minister, Gyani Zail Singh, frothing through his beard. He was very, very angry. And he ordered that in Punjab, there will be pre-censorship of all newspapers. Each and every news item has to be censored before it is published. Rest of the country, it was self-censorship. In Punjab, it was pre-censorship. Now, my father refused to write editorials, which was to submit it to a censor. So what we did was, instead of editorials, we were not allowed to leave space blank. We serialized what was known, a book known as Mahabharat Ka Shanti Parv. It is supposed to be the Bhishma Pitama, when he was on his deathbed in a bed of arrows, he gave a sermon to Yudhishthir about governance. And it's a thick, boring, unreadable book. But we started serializing. That was our form of protest. Editorial columns were full of Mahabharat Ka Shanti Par, installment 1, 2, 3, went on for days, weeks, months. Nobody read it. We didn't read it. Proofreading was slipshod, but that continued, And my father then started writing his memoirs, his life story, in a different column. But the editorial was Mahabharat Ka Shanti Par, and that they couldn't stop.
Because There's no one
So-
there to censor it, right?
So the reason I'm asking you that, sir, is because it's a very interesting form of protest that
Yes.
if you can't express, the question is asking Jyotsna, if you can't express what you truly believe and what you truly want to say, is not saying anything the best
Yeah.
form of
Well,
protest then?
that's
Is
the way
that
of
what you
saying
did?
that. Thing. Instead of leaving the space blank, which we were not allowed to, we said, okay, fill it up with something, grey matter.
You were, I don't know, sir, how old were you at that? You were actually facing the prospect of arrest. I'm sure you must have been.
I was there, yes, I was there. Warrants were out for my arrest, but we had a friend in the police at the lower level. You know, he sat on that for a while, and somebody then, because during the freedom struggle, Gyani Dayal Singh and my father were close. So somehow he finally changed his mind. Otherwise, I would have been in.
So you were mentioning Mr. Kuldeep Nair, and
Yes,
what he said
yes.
to you. I don't know if he
Yeah.
I mean, couple of years before he unfortunately passed away, he actually sat me down and said something which is I never left my mind. He was talking about those emergency days, and he said, it's not that bad. They arrest you and they take you away and they throw you into jail for a couple of years. You get used to it. It's not that bad, and you feel very good about it later that I did actually go to jail for what I believed. Did he give you that sort of advice too at that time?
No, he did not, because when he was arrested, well, I met him a long time after that. But of course, I remember when he was arrested. Now, this is something different from what happened during the freedom struggle. There was a feeling among the people, about the freedom struggle. During the emergency, what we know, there was no palpable feeling of protest. In fact, one of the reasons why, I was in Jalandhar and we thought there's no future for journalism in India. There's no support. Nobody's talking about it. And I left India. And I left Jyotsna, my brother, and the family to face all the troubles in the terrorism days. But that feeling during the emergency, I don't know. What did happen was that I once went to see his wife, Bharati Nair, while her husband was in prison. And she told me that you are the first journalist who has come to see me. People were scared. Nobody was speaking out. That was what was sort of very disheartening, that, what has gone wrong with the people in this country, Everybody was accepting what was happening.
So that, I think, brings us to the question that we were also talking about, and, from Pratap, all of those things have happened. But what I was describing there is something that perhaps often happens. I mean, not just in India, but around the world. It's one thing to say, okay, people are going to stand up for what journalism should be at a time when people seem to care. But increasingly, not just in India, but around the world, there's increasingly a feeling that do people really care? I mean, it's okay to take sacrifices and to be arrested 9 times and to be thrown into prison. If people are actually caring about the protest, you're doing it for a cause that people care about. If no one seems to care, then it becomes much tougher to do.
Oh, for sure. I think, and you see a lot of that today, isn't it, Vikram? I mean, I wonder, what about the middle class? We've watched Operation Sindoor, we watched the coverage, and I've diverted again, but we watched the coverage of all of it on television news. A lot of my friends used to message me, oh, Karachi port has been taken, and I said, it's absolutely fake. No, it's not. It was wrong. But after you've understood it's misinformation, you've understood it's fake news, but 2 days later you go back to watching the same thing. So there's no correction anymore. No, I don't know whether it's indifference or it's habit or no one really cares.
I mean, I know there are some people who are still in TV news here in the audience. I'm looking at you, Gargi, but in general, you should not be watching TV news. It's really bad for your health. I mean, every television news channel should come with a health warning saying this is going to give you high blood pressure or stress or worse. I mean,
Isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think of who else I can see who's still in TV news out here.
It doesn't give any stress. It's only entertainment. People are just saying something, you know it's all crap, so you don't care. It doesn't give any stress, trust me.
I guess the reason it gives, and this is perhaps a time when we throw this open to a more broader I guess the reason it gives you stress, at least the reason it gives me stress, which is why I never watch television news, is this is not what journalism is supposed to be. It is not supposed to be journalism. Please, if there is, you know, she was just describing what the mission of journalism has been for 100 years. The people, the things that people went through and suffered to be able to tell a story. And if that's not happening and you're seeing it's not happening, some way I guess there's stress as a result of that. Jyotsna, I'm now starting to fire that at you.
So for me, Vikram, actually I want to, can I just read 2 lines on the media, now that we've reached the media part, about the misinformation. The viewer, meanwhile, is treading around minefields of fake news, propaganda, and misinformation, with artificial intelligence also in the mix. Some days, truth is stranger than fiction. The genie is well and truly out of the bottle. The question arises, what then is the media's role if it surrenders and changes the goalposts that are central to a democracy? I ask you that now. What do you, to me, or let me put it like that now, that we've always grown up, Vikram, as journalists. In our training, we've been taught that journalists have to be neutral, journalists have to give both sides of the story. But what happens when the goalposts change?
Okay, seeing as we now, as you can see, officially flipping roles, and now she's firing the questions. So, brings us back to, Jyotsna, the conversations which we sometimes had when I left television, we were setting up Heritage. There is a problem. There's an economic and other reason as to why television news and other, the print is perhaps not as bad as it is. Television news, the way it is right now, is essentially driven by TRPs, right? There's no economic model. You don't get subscription in India. You're entirely based on, advertising revenue. Advertising comes from TRPs. TRPs come from shouting and screaming or being opinionated. You yell at somebody, you'll get TRPs. You call a tantric on your program, you'll get TRPs. If the anchor is a tantric, then that gets the highest TRPs of them all. But that's it. And you get you know how it is. TRPs come from that. Unfortunately, that's now being extended to the digital media also. Unfortunately. There was a long time when I hoped that this is a television problem caused by the fact that there are not enough people meters. So it's a measuring error that is happening. But unfortunately, people watch sensationalism. They watch hysteria. That's point number one. That's been there for the last 30 years, right? We've always known it. That the Mirror or Sun would get more viewership than, the Financial Times. What's happening now is, not just in India, but across the world, it is only when somebody is saying something which you agree with, or somebody is saying something so much that you disagree with so much that you want to shout to that person, that's what gets the clicks and the views and the TRPs. So you've got to be opinionated. You've got to either say Narendra Modi is the greatest prime minister in history, or you've got to say he's the worst prime minister in history. And if you say one of those things, you will be successful, you'll get TRPs, and you'll get clicks. If you're trying to be balanced, which is what journalism should be, you will not get views, you will not get clicks. There's no business model for being successful. That's the sad truth. And one of the reasons that we were setting up Heritage was to try and find a way of breaking that and trying to find a new way of doing it. Hopefully it'll happen, but I'm no longer as optimistic as I once was.
There's also social media in the mix today. And I think, unfortunately, the younger generation is now consuming the news on social media. It's so, also the way you consume news, now it's either 30-second reels, or it is, perhaps, I don't know where the long format is anymore, actually.
You can find the long format if you go searching for it. The fundamental problem with the news business, I think, is going to be getting the breadth of information. Like, if you want to go deep into a subject, if you want to research revolutionaries in pre-independence India, or what happened in Punjab, or let's really get into the tariffs, you'll be able to do Google search, you'll be able to ask ChatGPT, and you'll get the information. The real crux of the problem, and Jyotsna, again, you'll go back to the early days of editor-G when we were looking at it. The question was always, how do I get the basic information? Let's set the views aside. Views I'll be able to find. If I just want the news, what are the top 10, 20 things that happened today? You will remember the days when you used to be shouting at me in my year as the output editor at the 9 o'clock news. It was designed to say, I'm going to just give you the news. No opinion, 30 minutes, I'm going to give you the news. You don't get that anymore. Why? Because it doesn't get TRPs. No one's shouting at anybody in that, right? A. B, it's expensive to do, to go out and gather the news and to send reporters to all corners of the country and to get that footage and to have people standing. Remember the old day of the OB when there used to be a reporter standing there in Kargil or somewhere trying to say what's happening? That's expensive business. How expensive is it to get 3 anchors into a studio and get them to shout? I mean, 3 people into a, sorry, the anchor was a Freudian slip. To get 3 people into a studio to shout at each other, that's not that expensive.
There's also, the other thing is, and this book, central to the book has also been the theme of editorials, right? I mean, my grandfather stopped writing the editorials. My great-grandfather wrote such hard editorials. The editorials and the op-eds are disappearing in itself these days, isn't it?
I don't worry that much about that. Because editorials and op-eds you will find. They're there in the center of every newspaper. A lot of what you're finding on YouTube and on social media are people giving their opinion. They're giving their opinion in their monologues and other things, and people are watching it, and then either they're saying this person is talking a lot of sense, or they're saying this guy's a complete idiot, and that's happening. You'll get the opinion. I'm worried more about where do you get the basic news and information, because not just in India and anywhere in the world, you are no longer going to get agreement on what are the facts, what actually has happened here. You will not be able to get an agreement across the board. You go to the United States and say, okay, what's happening in XYZ thing? What happened in January the 6th? What's happened here? They don't agree on what the facts are. And that's what's being fed by the algorithms and social media, because you're only being seen one version of the story because the algorithm knows that that's what you're going to click on, right? It's reinforcing your belief. So the algorithms are feeding an echo chamber. The world is being divided into smaller and smaller echo chambers, populated entirely by people who think just like you do, right? You're not exposed to anything else. Anything else that you're hearing is therefore a lie. There is a reason why every government, not every government, a large number of governments deliberately attack mass media by calling it fake news. Why do you do that? Because if you don't have mass media giving you this is what the facts are, you can create any alternative reality that you like, and you can feed it to the people who are your base through social media and other formats. Now that is the truth. That is reality.
So there's that.
And it's going to get worse with AI, right? Because then you can actually create visuals and images and stories and real footage.
But that's already happening, isn't it?
It's going to get 100 times worse. But clickbait has been around. Clickbait has been around for 15 to 20 years, right? There was always clickbait, but in a sense, you often knew that, okay, this is clickbait. The world that we are headed into right now is a world where within a year, 2 years, professional quality content is going to be created by people in their dorm rooms, right? No media organization is going to have an edge in that anymore, because you can use AI today to do it. You could have a trained journalist sitting in a studio. I mean, all the people in NDTV would know that at once upon a time, there was a monopoly to that, right? Companies like NDTV used to feel that we can do a much better quality story, and look at our production and look at the graphics that we're putting in it. It would be much better. 2 years from now, 1 year from now or 2 years from now, certainly 3 years from now, any kid in a college dorm can do a better quality story, including long-form content, better edits, better visuals, better crafted, better scripted because you're using ChatGPT, better voiced because it's a perfect accent, no grammatical mistakes, and great AI created visuals. So there's professional journalists and the professional media will have no role to play in content creation, in my opinion, within a couple of years. And that's a scary situation to be in. Because now anybody with any agenda can create professional quality content. Aha. Now that's an
Yes,
interest.
because there is zero accountability as well, right? That's the big one. So influencers, supposed content creators, and zero accountability. I mean, Vikram, if you just go back, if there was one mistake that was made in the newsroom, the Roys would be sitting out, taking out that apology note, and all of y'all would be like looking at it, and it was such a big deal in that newsroom that there has been one mistake. Now, every other day, I mean, you see these news agencies who are spreading the information, they will take out this wrong information, it will get flagged, yet it will not be taken out for the next 24 hours. It's been flagged as fake information, but it will be taken out 24 hours later. By that time, that narrative has already built because it has spread. And yet, there's no answer. I mean, there's the Riya Chakravartis, there's the Aryan Khan. You can slander them on evening primetime television, but nobody's taking responsibility, nobody's apologizing.
Really? Primetime television news will slander people without attribution? That really happens now?
I think we should go back to TV, Vikram.
I'm shocked, really. And they don't apologize if it's wrong?
Do you want to take
I
names?
mean, I don't watch TV news, so you tell
You
me,
want to take names?
does that really happen?
You take the names. Go for it.
Surely nobody whom we know. Surely.
You've never worked with them
Surely. You
either.
never got-
Gargi?
Surely. Surely nobody will. I can't imagine TV news ever doing that. Actually, Jyotsna, I think I think content create. So I think you're right. He's gone back there. You're right. TV news is largely a circus and it's a bit of an entertainment. Content creation, I'm afraid, is not going to be very difficult to sift. Something which we often again debated when we were setting up Editorgy was the concept, though, of curation. And if I see a possible ray of hope in this rather gloomy picture that I'm painting, it is that hopefully where some level of sanity will prevail, the only possible silver lining is that after a certain period of time, the channels of curation will become all important. The people who really care about it, the people who care about the truth, the people who care about, how do I get balanced, good information, will be suddenly, what you're going to have, I think, in a couple of years is the equivalent of really standing under the Niagara Fall of information cascading down on you. Billions and billions and billions of pieces of story. Billions and billions of people of information. Half of them may be true, half of them may be fake. 80% of them will be biased. Very few of them will be genuine. What hopefully is going to start happening is that channels of curation will open up. So people will start saying, okay, we can trust this person to curate the correct information for us and tell us what has actually happened. Or we can trust this particular Instagram account or YouTube channel or Twitter handle, hopefully a TV channel, but I doubt it, who will be able to give us correct information. And then those will become, little sort of lighthouses of sanity, which will hopefully attract like-minded people. And hopefully then advertisers and others will say, okay, these are the people we need to back because there is a certain value in that. I can't believe that the human species will stop valuing truth and accuracy and facts as virtues, especially in a business that is based on telling people the facts and with accuracy and honesty and a lack of bias.
That brings me back to the book because that is at the center of the book has been, my family's belief that speaking truth to power is of utmost importance, and they have paid the price for it, but yet we have this amazing story that we have been able to, I think I've been privileged to have been born into this family with this kind of a history and been able to bring this story out. But I think what we've also learned in the last, few weeks, Vikram, is that there is still a little bit of hope from print media. At the end of the day.
I agree. The print media is probably the one thing that you will still open, and you will still, the experience hasn't changed drastically. If you were to actually read a newspaper today, it's a little different, but you're still getting the news, you're getting the information, you're getting many views, and so I think you're right. Surprising, but true.
Because there was this whole death knell that was, for the newspapers, but we've learned that at least we got some kind of clarity, some kind of factual information that came from the newspapers, at least during this, the entire, Operation Sindoor and the events around it. So I think that at least gives us hope that there is still something that is going on where we can get some kind of information. And I think it's also very important that more and more people write books.
Yes, but that brings me to my last question, Jyotsna. So when are you starting to use the newspaper again? Bring back Pratap. And hang on, you've just been telling us about how important it is. It's a family legacy. It lasted 100 years, more than 100 years. When are you bringing it back?
So it took me 2 years to convince my father to write this book. Now I am trying to tell him that maybe we should open this in a digital format. It's going to take me some more years.
Aha, but you heard it here first. So that's absolutely fantastic. Jyotsna?
I don't know.
I think we're flat out of time,
yeah.
so...
Yeah, maybe I'm going to... Can I end this
Yes,
out?
sure.
On a nice quote, which is, quote both my father and I love. But a couple of lines before that, as we are nearing Independence Day, so this one is very good. I mean, this is a timely discussion. What metal were our freedom fighters made of? They unflinchingly stared at or down at death while bearing all emotions to unshackle India from the Raj. It is in stark contrast to the nationalism and noise that pervades us today. Where have those men and women gone? In 75 years, how did the character of bravery change so drastically? Ironically, the term shaheed, martyr, a privilege used exclusively for names like Bhagat Singh, is thrown around loosely in present-day India. Will we no longer aspire for leaders of the stature of those who handheld India and its refugees as they together embraced the seminal folds of an unfamiliar destiny? There is a similarity between books and history. Both don't age, although tinkering with them is not unusual. By wiping a past of its integral persona, communities and recollections of unimaginable valor or inconceivable loss are allowed to disappear. If not, they are sanitized to reflect collective behavior and emotions. And I'm ending this with these lines that are very dear to my father and me. ना सर छिपा कर जिए हम, ना सर झुका कर जिए, सितमगर की नज़रों से नज़रें मिला कर जिए. अब अगर एक रात कम जिए तो कम ही सही, ये बहुत है कि मशालें जला कर जिए. Thank you very much.